I knew something was wrong the moment I pulled into the driveway. Her car was there. His was too. The garage door was slightly open, just enough to let the lie breathe. I killed the engine, sat in silence. My keys dug into my palm as I squeezed them tighter. My phone buzzed. "Can you pick up milk?" From her. 3 minutes ago. Milk. She was thinking about milk while cheating on me? I didn't kick the door open. I didn't storm inside. I walked. One step at a time. Quiet. Measured. The same way I'd moved through enemy territory overseas. The kind of calm you learn when rage is a luxury you can't afford. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Laughter. From upstairs. I didn't need to hear more. I'd heard that laugh too many times, just never laced with someone else's voice. I stood in the hallway, staring at the family photo on the wall. Us and my brother, Mason, who also happened to be my best man, godfather to our daughter, and apparently, the man currently in my bed. 10 years with her. 12 with him. I thought I was building a future. They were just building a cover. I didn't go upstairs. I walked out, sat in my truck, and reached for the old coin I kept in the center console. A silver dollar. 1971. My grandfather gave it to me before I deployed. Told me, every man has a moment where the world burns around him. Flip this when that time comes. I'd flipped it before making life or death calls in the field. Never failed me. I turned it over in my fingers. One side was scratched, heads. The other, smooth, tails. Heads, I burn it all down. Tails, I walk away. Start over. I flipped. It landed in my palm. Heads. They didn't even try to hide it afterward. She said they'd caught feelings. That it just happened. Mason didn't even bother to apologize. Said I'd changed since coming back home. Yeah, I had. I learned to read people by their silences. By what they didn't say. And what they both weren't saying screamed louder than anything else. She served me divorce papers before I could even decide how to respond. Full custody of our daughter. Said I was emotionally unstable. Used my service record against me. Mason co-signed her statements. It all unraveled fast. They'd planned this. Long before I came home. Maybe even before I deployed. They didn't just betray me. They took everything I loved and made it look like I was the one who lost control. My lawyer called it one of the most efficient character assassinations she'd ever seen. I called it war. So I planned. Not to kill. I'm not that man. But to take back what they tried to erase. Not with fists or bullets. With truth. With strategy. I spent 6 months gathering data. Every lie she told in court. Every asset Mason didn't report. I hired an investigator, former cyber intel. He pulled bank records, burner phones, messages from dating apps that proved she wasn't just with Mason. And then I found what I didn't expect. They weren't in love. They were in business. Together they had taken out loans in my name, identity theft, bought a property, renovated it, flipped it, made a profit, all while I was overseas. Mason's name was buried in a shell LLC. Hers was squeaky clean. Mine was the only one left to pay the taxes. They hadn't just cheated. They'd built their future on my blood. The day the documents were finalized, she smiled at me in the courtroom like she'd won. I didn't react. I flipped the coin in my pocket, just once. Still heads. Outside, Mason waited with his hand in his pocket like nothing had happened. "Man, I hope you find peace," he said. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, he flinched. "You're going to find something," I said. "But it won't be peace." Then I walked away. Because I knew where this story was headed. And they had no idea what it means when a soldier declares a private war. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. Not even my lawyer. Not the private investigator. Not my parents. When you've been betrayed by the two people you trusted most, silence becomes your only armor. People assumed I was coping. Healing. Moving on. They didn't know I was preparing. It started with the tax documents. I sent an anonymous tip to the IRS, flagging property transactions connected to a shell company named Stone Ridge Ventures. Mason was listed as an advisor. My name was buried in the paperwork, just enough to warrant suspicion. It was enough to trigger a review. I wasn't trying to destroy them. Not yet. I was testing how fast they'd squirm. It took less than 2 weeks for Mason to call her. I had tapped her phone. The conversation was short, but telling. "Did you say anything to Jacob?" "No." "Why?" "We've got movement. IRS is sniffing around." "Then keep your head down. He's not that smart." I smiled. They thought I was done. That betrayal had broken me. No, it had made me patient. One night, I parked outside the duplex they had bought with my identity. I watched the lights turn off at exactly 11:17 p.m. They were predictable. Even their routines were lazy. At 3 a.m., I entered the property next door, vacant, for sale. I wasn't breaking the law. Not technically. The key was in a fake rock under the back porch. I set up 2 micro cameras, one facing their front door, one catching the license plates of every car that came and went. Over the next 4 weeks, I watched and waited. A man started showing up every Thursday night. Drove a company car from a mortgage firm. Stayed for an hour. Never parked in the driveway. Never used the front door. She'd traded up from my brother already. I traced him. His name was Darren. Divorced. Kids. Wife had a restraining order against him for emotional abuse. Another pattern. She didn't want love. She wanted leverage. Every man in her life was a pawn for access or alibi. And Mason? He was just another tool. He didn't even realize he was being used. Yet, I sent Darren's ex-wife an anonymous package. Inside, photos of him arriving, timestamps, and a copy of the restraining order. I didn't need to frame him. I just pointed a spotlight where it hurt. He stopped visiting 2 weeks later. Then I let Mason stew. With Darren gone, she started getting distant. I watched their texts fall apart. He asked why she seemed distracted. She said she needed space. He panicked. Started showing up to her work. Calling nonstop. I knew that tone. I'd heard it in myself once, when everything slipped through my fingers. And I knew what came next. I wasn't trying to make him violent. But I wasn't going to stop him either. He showed up at her office parking lot one afternoon, shouting. Security escorted him out. He tried to explain himself later, but she blocked him. Then I made my next move. I mailed him a flash drive. No name. No return address. On it, screen captures of bank statements showing her siphoning funds from a business account he thought she'd closed months ago. Photos of her and Darren from my surveillance. And one line of text. Still think she's worth losing everything for? He didn't respond. Not directly. But 3 days later, Mason showed up at my gym. I saw him before he saw me. He looked rough, gaunt, nervous. The way someone looks when their foundation's been kicked out from under them. I let him sweat in the corner for 20 minutes before walking over. You don't have to do this, he said. Voice low. Do what? Whatever this is. You've made your point. I leaned in. This isn't the point. This is just the first lesson. His hands trembled. You don't understand what she's like. No, I interrupted. You don't understand what you did. To me. To my daughter. He didn't say anything. So I gave him an out. Just one. Walk away. Leave the state. I don't care where. Disappear. And maybe I'll stop. She'll ruin me if I leave. Then stay. And watch how I do it instead. The day after that conversation, he quit his job. Deleted his social media. Transferred funds from the joint business account. His half. And vanished. She tried to report him for theft. I'd already anticipated that. The bank flagged her account due to my earlier anonymous complaints. She couldn't access a cent without triggering an audit. And still, I wasn't done. Because none of this had touched the only thing that mattered. My daughter. Some men lose their families and go numb. I got sharper. It had been 9 months since I walked in on the betrayal. 8 since I flipped the coin. 3 since Mason disappeared from the state without a trace. But none of that mattered if I couldn't bring my daughter home. Everything else was groundwork. They said the courts don't favor fathers. I say they favor facts. You just have to know where to find them and how to make people listen. The custody agreement had been settled fast and quiet. Temporary full custody to her while they evaluated my emotional stability. A phrase that meant nothing, but sounded dangerous in a court filing. Mason had co-signed that affidavit before I erased him. But now it was my move. I filed a motion to reopen custody based on significant new information. Judges don't care about heartbreak. They care about paperwork. And I had stacks. The hearing was set for mid-April. I had 4 weeks. I started by building a timeline. Every text she'd sent me that contradicted what she told the court. Every purchase that contradicted her claims of financial hardship. Every missed school pickup. Every suspicious business trip she took while leaving our daughter with rotating babysitters. Then I turned to character. I hired a licensed child therapist to evaluate me, and more importantly, to evaluate my daughter's behavior around me. The report came back in my favor. Clear bond. Emotional safety. No signs of distress. Meanwhile, I had surveillance logs that showed a string of strangers visiting the house at night. Not illegal. but not a great look for someone claiming to provide stable, structured care. Then I pulled my ace. A former friend of hers came forward. They'd had a falling out over money. This friend had screenshots, long text threads where my ex talked openly about manipulating custody to secure child support, calling our daughter a financial asset. That was the exact phrasing. A financial asset. I didn't need to embellish. I just had to highlight. Court day came. She wore the mask well, calm, motherly, polished. But underneath, she was fraying. She didn't expect me to show up this prepared, or this composed. My lawyer did most of the talking. I kept my eyes on the judge. When her turn came, she went straight for pity. Jacob has changed since deployment. He's distant, angry. I was afraid of what might happen if our daughter said the wrong thing around him. No tears, just the idea of them. I waited. Then my lawyer pulled out the printed texts. Her calling our daughter an asset. Her telling Mason she'd keep custody just long enough to break him down. Her face didn't move, but her fingers twitched. The judge noticed. Next came the footage, her boyfriend at the house 3 nights a week, our daughter staying with a different sitter each time. In one clip, the child is crying at the window while the new man leaves at 2 a.m. I watched the judge's face harden. Then came my evaluation. Therapist testimony. Video of me with my daughter, building Legos, helping with homework, her laughing. Not performative, just real. The last piece was a note my daughter had written in crayon during one of our visits. I like mommy's house, but I feel safe with daddy. Silence. The judge didn't say much when the hearing ended. Said a ruling would be issued in 10 business days. It came in 7. Joint custody, week on, week off. Neutral drop-offs. Final review in 90 days. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. The first time I picked her up, she clung to me like she thought I might disappear again. I didn't cry. I just held her. That night she asked, "Are we going to live together again forever?" I paused. "Not yet," I said, "but we're on our way." But the battle wasn't over. She didn't take the ruling well. 3 weeks in, she tried to file an emergency reversal, claimed I was emotionally manipulative, said our daughter had nightmares after seeing me. The judge reviewed the filings and dismissed them in under 24 hours. The court was starting to see the pattern. Then came the CPS visit. 2 agents. Standard questions. They were polite, professional, and clearly annoyed they'd been called out on a bogus tip. My house was spotless. My daughter was in school, on time, with lunch packed. Her teacher sent a written statement confirming consistent attendance and positive behavior. CPS closed the case that same week, and I sent her attorney a formal warning. One more false report, and we file for full custody citing legal harassment. She backed off. For now, the court had given us 90 days to prove we could co-parent. But I wasn't interested in co-anything. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was trying to prove something deeper, to my daughter, and maybe to myself. That just because someone takes everything from you doesn't mean you stay broken. You rebuild. Not louder. Smarter. I thought she'd run out of cards. The court was starting to see through her. The false CPS claim had backfired. Our daughter was thriving during her weeks with me. I had evidence, records, testimony, not just that I was fit, but that I was present. Then she played the one card I hadn't expected. She tried to move out of state with my daughter. Her petition came quietly, filed through a different attorney, cloaked in the language of career opportunity and fresh start. But I knew better. She'd never cared about career. The job was a shell, a remote marketing position that didn't require relocation. The real motive? Distance. Control. Isolation. She wanted to run again. Not from me. From the truth closing in. The hearing date landed just 2 weeks out. My lawyer was confident. The judge wouldn't approve it. But I wasn't gambling on confidence. I was building a case as if everything was at stake. Because it was. She wanted to take my daughter across the country, to a city where I had no ties, no recourse. Where supervised Zoom calls would become my only connection. Where she could rewrite the story. Again, I didn't sleep for 2 nights after reading the petition. Not because I was afraid of losing, but because I was tired of reacting. I needed to change the tempo. Seize control of the narrative. Not just defend custody, but dismantle her power altogether. I didn't want balance anymore. I wanted the gavel to come down once and for all. I started with the company she claimed had offered her the dream job. A quick investigation showed it wasn't real. The address was a co-working space. The contact person listed in the HR letter didn't exist. My tech guy ran the metadata on the document. It had been created on her personal laptop. Forged. I recorded a statement from the co-working receptionist confirming she'd never heard of the company. I got screenshots of her social posts saying she was thinking of launching a startup, dated just weeks before the petition. No job, no move, just a setup. I sent it all to my lawyer, and we submitted it as supplemental evidence. Pattern of deceit intended to disrupt custody and mislead the court. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't a game anymore. So I went quiet. No messages, no emotion, just compliance with the schedule. She reached out twice. First, a casual, "Can we talk about summer plans?" Then a guilt-laced, "I'm doing what's best for her, you know." I didn't respond to either. Let silence do the talking. At the hearing, her attorney opened with the usual script: opportunity, stability, growth. Then came the emotional angle. Ms. Reese only wants a peaceful life for her daughter. A clean slate. The judge asked for verification of the job. Her lawyer handed over the same forged letter. My attorney stood up without a word and passed our exhibit to the clerk, including the metadata analysis, the false address, and a printed screenshot of her social media post. Guess it's time to make my own job. CEO of me? The courtroom went still. Her lawyer looked blindsided. The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Reese, did you fabricate this job offer?" She didn't answer. Not right away. When she did, it was weak. A mumbled excuse about being pressured and just trying to make a plan. The judge revoked her petition on the spot. But then, something I hadn't expected. He ordered an immediate reevaluation of custody. Suggested that full custody transfer might be appropriate given a clear pattern of manipulation. She lost her composure for the first time in months. Outside the courthouse, she followed me to the parking lot. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You're so righteous now? You're not better than me." I looked at her. Calm. Steady. Maybe not. But I'm not lying to a judge about a fake job so I can steal a child. She didn't answer. Just stood there, realizing, maybe for the first time, that the story was no longer hers to control. 2 weeks later, the custody ruling came in. Primary physical custody awarded to the father. Mother granted supervised visits pending further evaluation. No celebration, just breath. Finally, that night, my daughter curled up next to me on the couch. "Daddy, are we staying here forever now?" I nodded. "Yeah, kiddo. We're not going anywhere." She smiled and went back to her drawing. A picture of us, side by side, holding hands. It didn't erase the damage, but it gave it a name. Closure. 3 days later, I got a letter from her attorney. No apology, just a formal note. Ms. Reese has decided to forego further legal action and will comply with all terms of the current custody arrangement. Translation: she was done fighting because she had nothing left to fight with. And me? I wasn't angry anymore. Not because I forgave her, but because I'd already reclaimed what mattered: my daughter, my name, my future. She stopped trying the moment the attention was gone. No more filings. No more messages. No more concerned mother performances. When the spotlight moved off her, so did the fight. She wasn't interested in parenting, just winning. And when that stopped being possible, she let the silence grow. Supervised visits came and went. My daughter returned quieter each time. Eventually, she stopped asking about them at all. I didn't say anything. Kids sense what matters. You don't have to explain why someone isn't showing up when they know what showing up looks like. I thought revenge would feel like fire. It didn't. It felt like order. Like standing in the middle of the chaos and realizing the storm had passed, and the roof was still over your head. What burned wasn't rage anymore. It was the knowledge of how close I came to losing her, not just physically, but emotionally. The system nearly failed us both. What saved us wasn't a lawyer or a courtroom. It was time. Time spent being present. Time spent showing up, not with speeches, but with consistency. With small things. Math homework. Bedtime stories. Listening instead of talking. She never needed me to win. She just needed me to stay. My daughter was 9 when she asked the question I knew would come. We were walking back from the park. Quiet afternoon, light breeze. And out of nowhere, "Why don't I live with Mom anymore?" I didn't flinch. I didn't lie. I didn't unload the full truth either. She wasn't ready for that, and maybe never would be. "Because the judge thought you'd be safer and happier here," I said. She looked down at her shoes, thinking, was she bad? I knelt down, looked her in the eye. She made bad choices. But she's not all bad. People are complicated. She nodded like she understood. Then, but you didn't leave. That's what I remember most. That was it. Years of planning, stress, court battles, strategy, all distilled into that one sentence. You didn't leave. The house feels different now. Not because anything changed in it, but because it's ours. Not the building. The life inside it. She does her own laundry now. Picks her own cereal. Leaves crayon messages on the fridge. Good luck at work, Daddy. You're the best chef in the galaxy. I frame everyone. I got a message from Mason recently. No return address. Just a few sentences typed out and mailed in a blank envelope. You were right. I didn't see it until too late. I lost everything. And maybe I deserved it. But I hope she didn't ruin you. Because you were always the better man. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He was right about one thing, though. She didn't ruin me. She sharpened me. I still carry the coin. Same one I flipped the night it all started. It lives in my truck now, just above the ignition. I haven't flipped it since. Because I don't need fate to decide for me anymore. Back then, I didn't trust myself to choose between peace and fire. Now I know better. You don't chase destruction to prove you're alive. You build something worth protecting and defend it with everything you've got. That's what legacy means. Not trophies. Not headlines. A child who sleeps through the night because she knows she's safe. A man who doesn't need revenge anymore because he already won. A friend once told me that every man, at some point, has to decide who he is when no one's clapping, when no one's watching, when everything he loved has been torn out from under him. Most people get stuck in that moment. They freeze. They blame. They let someone else tell their story. I almost did too. But now, when my daughter runs to me with a scraped knee or a math problem, when she yells, "Dad," from across a crowded gym, I remember. I was never fighting to hurt anyone. I was fighting to be that man. The one she could always count on to catch her when she jumps, stand behind her when she's scared, and stay even when staying felt like hell. We've rebuilt. Not perfectly, but truthfully. No secrets. No lies. No performances. Just the two of us, moving forward, together. And as long as she keeps waking up knowing she's loved, that's all the justice I'll ever need. It could have ended there. I had custody, peace, a rebuilt life. But there's something most people won't tell you about healing. Once the bleeding stops, you start noticing everyone else who's still cut open. You see the fathers in waiting rooms, holding court documents like shields. The kids being dragged between homes, used like leverage. You see versions of yourself in every hallway, reliving the same nightmare under a different name. That's when I knew I wasn't done. Not with her. With the system that let her almost win. A former Army buddy reached out. He ran a small nonprofit that helped veterans through custody battles. Said he'd seen my case. Asked if I'd consider speaking to a group of dads going through it. I said yes before I could second guess it. The night of the meeting, there were 6 men in the room. Tired faces. Hollow eyes. Every one of them wore that quiet kind of defeat you don't notice until you've lived it. I told them what happened. Not the tactical play-by-play, the real story. How I almost disappeared under the weight of betrayal. How I nearly handed over my daughter without a fight because the system made me believe I couldn't win. And how the only thing that saved us was not giving up when the world said it was too late. One guy cried. Another just kept nodding. The third asked for the name of my lawyer. I left that night with something I hadn't expected to feel again. Purpose. Within months, I was volunteering weekly, reviewing affidavits, helping write statements, coaching dads through what to say in court. I wasn't a lawyer, but I knew what mattered. Don't react emotionally. Don't accuse, document. Don't try to burn her down. Just hold your ground. Most of all, show up. Every single time. You'd be amazed how powerful present can be when the other side only plays games. Word spread. I helped 6 fathers get joint custody in a single year. 2 of them got full custody after the court saw the patterns. None of it made headlines. No viral justice. Just kids going home with the parent who wouldn't leave. That was enough. Then one day I got a call from a man I didn't know. Said he'd heard about me. Said his brother was being dragged through a custody case where false abuse claims had been weaponized. His niece had started shutting down emotionally. He didn't know who to trust. I told him to meet me at the diner near the courthouse. He showed up with a folder full of notes, court dates, recordings. I listened for an hour straight. When he finished, he looked at me and said, "You talk like someone who's been through hell." I have, I said, but I didn't stay there. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about what comes after the fall, about what you do when you finally stand back up. Some people walk away and try to forget. I stayed, because the fight's still happening for people who can't afford to lose. And I remember what it felt like to have no map, no compass, no voice. If I can be that for someone else, even just once, I win again. My daughter knows now. Not the courtroom details, but the story. She knows her mom made choices, that her dad stayed, that we both loved her, but I fought when it mattered most. She asked me once if I hated her mother. I told her no. Hate's too easy. I don't waste time on it anymore. So what do you feel? Grateful. She showed me how far I'm willing to go for the people I love. There's no parade at the end of stories like mine. No clean credits, no dramatic music. There's just a decision. What are you going to do with what broke you? Are you going to let it define you, or rebuild something no one can take? I chose the second one, and I'll keep choosing it. For her, for me, for the fathers still fighting, and for the kids still waiting to be believed. Because once you learn how to protect someone, you never stop seeing who else needs saving.